Hi, Dr. Mossbach. This is my final project presentation. I'm going to apologize right here and right now. I'm really sick, so if that comes out in my voice, I apologize. But let's get right into it. Starting off with an area where my thinking has been changed throughout this class. At the beginning, when we did that self-assessment of our school improvement plan, I had stated that our professional development was aligned to the mission and core values. After analyzing and doing those different papers, I could see that there was actually a very small focus on professional development. There was a lack of accountability and fidelity to the plan, and there was no consistency. And in those plans, we need to make sure that we have consistency because we have to uphold all the different changes, times, budgets, community for its implementation. If we don't, then we're letting everybody down and we're likely to not see any student outcomes or data. And so when we can actually implement the plan, help our teachers shape their actions around effective professional learning, and align those professional development efforts, we can much better understand and move forward with our students. Starting with 2 areas Western Hills would benefit to improve. My first one would be data use. I have observed that we do a lot of data with our high-stakes testing, but we really don't look at student work samples or formative assessments. And so an improvement that would be made that would help would be to make sure we are looking at that formative data, we are collaboratively divulging that data and helping each other to figure out where students might need extra support. And a big part of it is if leaders will show that perspective of how data is very impactful, it could be a staff-wide change. When we see those school portfolios, we should strive to look for a multi-dimensional collection of information, meaning it's not just high-stakes testing, it's formative assessment, it's climate data, it's attendance, all those things. My second one would be using that professional development for its actual use. I know I just talked about that, but we are not using it effectively. And so when we have those documents, we're just putting them out there and not actually reading them or following through. We don't have that integrity. When we want to build capacity in teachers, it demands that we create a focused learning opportunity and encourage the staff members to be questioning what's going on and reflective about what's going on. When we're doing professional development, that's supposed to be a learning tool. And so if we're not allowing for those learning opportunities, our teachers aren't getting better and we're not going to see those student outcomes that we want. Those important leadership capabilities, kind of going off the same thing that I talked about in the final thoughts discussion post, integrity is incredibly important. Sticking to what you're going to do, just like that professional development plan. If we're putting it out there and then we're not actually doing it, what's the point of doing it? Trust can be broken when someone does not live up to their word. And I found that something that really enhanced my understanding was that leadership is all about character. It's not about how well you can look at data. It's not about how well you can organize certain things. It's about the character that you are and the values that you're living up to. The other important leadership capability would be collaboration. You will get nowhere in leadership if you are not being collaborative and emphasizing that relationship building. Good leaders who have made lasting relationships can encourage that reflection. They can encourage and emphasize collaboration, and they can use that constructive feedback. If you don't have that when you're trying to solve conflict, you're not going to be able to have meaningful conversations because there isn't that relationship built. When you do, you can have that more open to learning conversation that's solving the problem but also building the relationship. The Jesuit charisms that I found in those 2 values would be for integrity, contemplation, and action, and then collaboration or relationship building would be cura personalis. Contemplation and action requires that you are stopping and reflecting on how your actions are reflected in your morals, how your actions are intertwined with your values. So you have to have integrity to what you're doing. If you're reflecting, you should be able to see how those values are intertwined. If you do not have integrity, you can't do this charism. It's not going to be as effective. For collaboration and leadership building, cura personalis is rooted in that value of relationship building. Staff needs to make sure they're caring for the whole person. So if your staff leader is only looking at how you are professionally, they're not going to be very good with your relationship building, and you're not going to have that extra edge to be able to actually have a relationship with them. Without understanding where our staff members come, both professionally and personally, we're not creating that cura personalis, and we're not allowing them to be their best selves and feel safe. The last thing would be my commitment to growth as a leader. I've talked a lot about data, and I feel like I could be much better about using data. And so some of the things I really want to make sure I'm doing is utilizing that data to understand where my students are formatively and summatively, monitoring that daily learning, which would be that formative assessment, and then emphasizing small group instruction. That was something that I was really timid about last year, and I really want to make it at the forefront of my teaching this year. I want to make sure when I go to my PLCs, I'm bringing actual samples and trying to collaborate with my grade level team to find solutions. I want to make sure when we get professional development tools, I'm actually using them, even if it's not going to be a top-down focused thing, and tracking that data to see if I can find improvement from using those professional development tools. And then lastly, I want to make sure I'm asking questions on how to best handle all the data and finding new ways to manage student work. As a second-year teacher, I'm still kind of figuring out how this all works, and so I think that would be really impactful. Thank you so much, and here are my references.